I'm Jason, and I'm going to demonstrate today how to assemble the JDation DIY compact case. These pieces here are the pieces that you will get in the mail. It's just 3/16 inch acrylic. This is the smoke version, looks pretty nice. There's actually a very kind of specific order that you want to go in to save yourself a lot of headache when assembling the case. So I would recommend that you kind of follow the steps that I'm showing here in the order that I'm showing. You don't have to, but I think I figured out a fairly decent way to get this thing assembled. The very first thing we want to start with is we want to start with assembling the bottom plate. This is the bottom plate here in my design. Here I've got a fan and a couple of wire clamps. So I'm going to go ahead and install these wire clamps first. So those are the wire clamps. And now I'm going to install this little 40 millimeter fan. I think we'll put it like that. Tighten these up a little bit. Don't need them super tight. Okay, so that is our bottom plate. Next, we're going to install the power supply on the bottom shelf. So this part that has the little cutout right up here, this is actually the bottom side, so it's going to sit like this, and you want your wires to come towards this little cutout section. So all these wires are assembled on the bottom. Now one thing you'll notice is this has the holes pre-cut. These holes are pre-cut based on the design that you create at jdation.com using our JDation designer. You can order this blank without the holes cut, but in this case I've used the JDation designer to pre-cut all these holes for me. You'll see it's precision perfect, makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to assemble this case. Make a little room here. Screws over here. All of these Meanwell cases use a 4 millimeter screw. And these screws actually go through the acrylic and into the case itself. And that is the bottom plate. So now we've assembled the bottom plate and the bottom shelf. Next, we want to go ahead and assemble our top shelf. The top shelf is where the components go. So just to kind of show you for orientation, the top shelf is going to sit right on top of the bottom shelf like that. Again, in this design I've added all these little holes. Here is where all my components go, and all of these holes have been pre-set up using the JDation designer. So the holes are pre-configured for a little, this is a power distribution unit, and this is a pixel pop controller. So this is kind of how this is going to line up. The recommended way to do this is using some standoffs. Again, these holes here are pre-sized for 3 millimeter standoffs, and so that's what we're using today. All right, and now we have those in place. Next thing we want to do is our pieces just attach to these. Again, using 3 millimeter screws. Okay, So that is the top plate. Now here's the part that I want to make sure that everybody sees. These pieces, these here are zip tie holes. So the idea is that you can use it to tie your wires down a little bit easier and clamp them to the board. But the key is you really want to get all of your zip ties through those holes in advance. So you go ahead, and the reason you want to do it in advance is unless you have extremely small fingers, it's fairly difficult to put these in. The other alternative you can do in the Designer is you could use something, you know, like this, which is just like a little cable clamp, and then in the Designer just create yourself a little hole. This is nice in my opinion because you don't need any extra parts. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to have some wires, some pigtails. So if you think about this, it's going to sit like this. I'm going to have some pigtails that come out, and then I'm going to have power that needs to go over to here, and then I'm going to have a pigtail that comes out here. So I'm going to have power injection coming out over here, and then my main data coming out from over here. And then I'm going to use power from the fan out board over to here so that this pixel pop is fused. So that's the concept we're going for. I'm going to speed through this as I do a little bit of wiring on this thing. Is it's best practice not to tin your wires when they're going into a screw down connector. Tinning your wires, while it makes it easier to get them in, can actually cause loose wires once the equipment gets under load. So that's going to kind of go in there, and this is going to hold it together. Put another zip tie in here before I start assembling this thing. Okay, we want to go ahead and add our power. So this is going to sit just like this, and while it's conveniently open, we want to go ahead and run our just 110 power cable in and go ahead and get it connected up. You can do this later, but it's just a whole heck of a lot easier to do it now. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of assembly here. So this is going to sit just like this. And again, this whole thing just kind of snaps together and then is held in place with zip ties. So, get this out of the way. I would recommend that you don't actually connect these zip ties yet. Next, we'll put this top plate on. Without tightening everything down first, it makes it easier. So next, I'm going to go ahead and assemble this top piece here. Just like that. Some people asked me why I didn't do this using some screws or something to hold this thing together, and quite honestly, I just like the concept of using zip ties because I always have zip ties, so I use them for everything in my display. Alright, that's nice and tight, and then we just need to run a few more through this bottom plate to just make it nice and tight. now this thing is good and tight, and we can go ahead and start putting the pigtails on. One thing I'll go ahead and do just to make this thing a little cleaner, let's go ahead and cut all these off real quick. So our case is coming together nicely. Let's go ahead. You'll notice that I put these wires on earlier. There's actually access to be able to get down to the power supply screws, but it sure is a heck of a lot easier to go ahead and do it before you assemble. Okay, and then we are just going to go ahead and put our pigtails in. I've got this one is the data. These are some power injection pigtails here. Now you'll see where these zip ties are coming together. So, for example, I can have this pigtail is going to come right in here, and this zip tie will hold it down. You know, if you're running a 12-volt system and you want to get a fan, make sure you get a 12-volt fan. Vice versa, if you're running a 5-volt system, make sure you get a 5-volt fan. Got that piece wired up, and then next we'll go ahead and just do our power injection lines. Okay, so we've got that. Now you're going to see where this mess of zip ties comes together, so we can go ahead and start zip tying everything down. And there you have it. This thing is basically put together. I did that in 35 minutes. Sure, in the edited version that'll be about 10 minutes, but that took me about 35 minutes to assemble that. If you want to have a PVC pipe, go ahead and insert that next. What you need to do to get yourself a PVC pipe, however long you want it, cut a hole all the way through one end, and then you simply insert that into this hole, and it's pretty tight. You want it to be pretty tight so it doesn't wiggle around on you, and kind of get it to right about there. And then what you can do is there's a special zip tie hole. So there it is. There is our DIY compact case. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you follow kind of the order I just showed, while it seems a little bit convoluted, it'll go together a heck of a lot better. And then of course, you know, you gotta get your PVC fence pipe, and the case is totally assembled. When it's standing up like that, it is 100% waterproof. One other feature I want to show, I forgot about, is there's some little holes. Let me see if I can get a decent angle here. There's the little zip tie port right here and right here. I don't have these drilled because it's just not a big enough deal, but if you want, you can drill some holes in the side here. And then when you insert this, you can actually stick a zip tie through the side and hold the top securely to the container. I don't do that because quite honestly I have them kind of hidden behind my shrubs and in my trees, and if I need to get access I kind of like to just be able to take it off, and I've never had any kids mess with it. So there you go. That is the DIY compact case from JDation. I think the one thing I want to reiterate is makes this thing pretty cool is you can move these components. You can add different components. If you want to use a 4-port pixel controller from Falcon, you can add that in our designer tool. We've got several different of these fan out boards. We've got the Sand Device boards. We've got the Falcon equipment. This is a Pops Power fan out board here. This is a really cool board I just got this year for my display. We've got a lot of the components that are real common components in the designer, and you can add all this stuff right in. So that's basically it. If you have any questions, please reach out to me out to me on email, and I'll try to get your answers to the questions. And thank you very much.